find this way. Can you understand me? Yeah, fine. Feedback was fine. Okay. We heard a lot about discussions already about biomarkers and histology and so on. I will show a bit of our experiences when applying digital pathology on biomarkers in clinical trials. This work we did together with Jeroen's group and with a colleague of mine from the NCI in the Division of Epidemiology and Genetics, which are department which is also very interested in biomarker research. We'll show, discuss a bit in the beginning about digital pathology and biomarkers in general, and then show two cases of cytology and histology. So just don't go in detail here. Just point is we not only work theoretically, but we also doing some histology works for a long time already, and we're trying, that's why we're working with biomarkers to combine histology and immunohistochemistry and whole slide imaging. We see a lot of digitization everywhere. I think many of the introductory things have been discussed already. Nevertheless, if you don't know the movie Pixels and you are still can remember the 80s, 1980s, I mean, then maybe this is a fantastic movie if you haven't seen it. And it nicely picks up the topic of digital transformation, and as we see, digital transformation has occurred in all areas of society, but not really in all. It's like this famous Asterix comics, this is a small region in science which has rejected digitization, which is pathology, and there's some, interestingly, some reasons for asking why this is the case. And this is, I love this picture very much because it shows many problems we see in pathology, just without further going into detail, because we had so many discussions already about this question of standardization and so on. What we see in clinical trials is that pathology is the backbone there, and it is used for classification of diseases, and increasingly and very importantly for the quantification of biomarkers. But its key problem is there that it is really non-digital, and that is just picking up. I'm just picking up continuously these topics we have been discussing already prior to this break here. Key point in our view is really it is non-digital, and this is really a problem because all its key parts cannot be decomposed and understood. It's really acting like a black box. And we were discussing a lot about deep learning and black boxes. Just my comment to this. So pathology is also to some extent a black box, and we probably don't have. We have to be careful by not replacing one black box by another black box. But pathology is not really better in being a black box, and this black box property makes it difficult to understand really what is going on there, and we don't know really and cannot capture what the main components and data points, so to say, are in the decision which has been taken by a pathologist. Another part, just general comment on this, is that we increasingly see that Jeroen has mentioned it initially already. Pathology can be understood also a bit broader, and this is something we increasingly will see. At the moment, the point is that pathology is really disconnecting studies, so to say, from its full value of tissue. So we cannot capture all the information which is included in tissue actually, because most of the pathologists we see, they're just looking for one specific property. So in genomics terms, we'd say it's more hypothesis driven actually. So this is what conventional histology is doing now. It's more, if at all, digital. Yeah. most part are non-digital. If digital is based on a lot of manual annotation, yeah, it's more categorical. It's about confirming hypotheses actually, and to discover or confirm specific correlation, to look for specific biomarkers. And so technology is usually pretty simple, which is used in digital. And increasingly we see now with deep learning, we are moving here on side this gradient. We're moving more towards hypothesis-free histology, having more free and novel discovery about spatial relations, what's going on in a tissue actually. This is what we increasingly see. Just one example here. If you're looking frequently in clinical trials today at immunological markers, and this is a marker of killer T cells, CD8 here. You see the assembling and gathering here as a cluster. At the same time, you see the small marker, marker expressed in a small field, PL1, which is actually down-regulating and can down-regulating the effect of these killer T cells, so they're trying to attack a tumor here. And you see this is a very small area here. You'd say, okay, what the hell, does it have any meaning here? But it has great meaning because it's actually occurring right at this spot where the killer T cells are located. So that's why the combination, spatial combination of markers plays an enormous role in these studies. So what we will probably come up with, and what you see these things coming up increasingly at conference already, some kind of cartography of tissues. It's probably something which will happen sooner or later, but it has some technical requirements which need to be solved. If you look at clinical trials, this is typically, if you give an introduction, what you see. Usually you assemble a set of tissue blocks. It shows the block in the beginning. These blocks are cut, IHC stains are, immunohistochemical stains are done, things are scanned, and algorithm applied, and data analysis done. So this is a standard way how it's done. The problem here, what we observe increasingly, is that errors are propagated and accumulated throughout this pipeline here. And so blocks, for example, they do not contain the right tissue or wrong types of tissue. This is simply not chosen in the right way because most of the biopsies have been taken. They have differences in antibodies which are suited or which may vary from case to case. There are many staining variations, scanning artifacts, questions, image analysis, security. So many questions what we actually observe, and all these questions and problems really form challenges which really hinder sometimes that you really get a good and accurate analysis in the end. So it's not that simple, just starting on the left side and then you end here on the right side. It's mostly not really working very well. So this is bottom line of our insight and experience. So what more appropriate is actually that you here start with validating the antibody biomarkers, then establish a specific training cohort, then established image analysis was validated, so that's then you have you have to put a lot of effort already in the establishment here of all the digital procedures. And then you can go further on quality checks and blocks, sections, staining, scans, and so on. And then in the end, at the last point, you actually come up with and perform actually the analysis. This is pretty important to our experience to get good results in the end. And something we increasingly see, which is necessary to accompany all these steps actually by digital pipeline, which is so far not really existing, but needs to be created. So here we see probably database solutions coming up, and which will be integrated with some other clinical data infrastructure, like in genomics we've seen. So there's a lot to do still in these areas. We have been setting up some databases, how to track all these processes. But just to show you, all these processes have to be looked at, and it's not just a part of image analysis and digital pathology actually. And then in the end, if all these things are integrated, the idea is that we will come up with something like digital tumor banks here, which really contain large amounts of data on specific tissues, and which can then be reliably analyzed in the way we've seen it already in the previous presentation. Just briefly go into image analysis. We have seen fantastic studies already here. Just one important point if you work on clinical studies, actually, you always have this decision you have to take. Do you use off-the-shelf image analysis software? And I've put it here again, it's a specific digital assay. So this is what you would, in the upper side, there are several software packages that you could buy here. Don't want to name specific ones here, but the problem here frequently is they can be trained, it's fine, but they cannot be trained on so many examples that you really get a reliable classifier out. And then so you can design quickly some assays with it, some digital assays with it, some digital image analysis, that's fine. They're pretty fast to use, and usually pathologists or also biologists like to use these tools because they're really fast to use, so that's great. But if you have a specific question and would like to minimize variation and maximize the quality you get out, then you go to specific digital assay. So specific, best deep learning based analysis assay. I've just tried to group these things here in the approaches on a ladder. And what we see in clinical reality, or most clinical studies even, is here manual viewing. Yeah, this is mostly what's done. There are several studies which are using programming here already and some machine learning, but I've seen very little on deep learning here. The advantage is if you go to deep learning is here, you can use it really for difficult morphological based tasks, but you have to tailor it on the other side to specific cases, so you lose your general applicability of all the software. You need a lot of training here, but on the other hand you gain the capability to handle variation. So if you have large numbers of patients, that's the way to go. And if there are few smaller patients you have to look at, then we go for either some programming or just a manual viewing that's faster than. So, but these are the two most state-of-the-art extremes, I would say, which are applied at the moment. In deep learning, I don't go into detail. We have seen this already. I've just brought you an example here of an application we designed exactly in this way. So it's a specific biomarker we're using. It's an example from cytology. Advantage here is, I mean, generally we have very little or no automatic diagnostics in pathology, so cytology is a bit easier to validate there. And nevertheless, we see a lot of problems, interestingly, although it seems to be a very simple field to look at. And we've developed some assays here which are currently validated in clinical trials. That's what we're doing with the NCI together. So we try to bring this in the moment into one coherent application scenario where we do slide scanning, image analysis, and then having a user interface. So we are doing this not on unstained samples or HE, but on two specific biomarkers which are called P16 and Ki67. So Ki67 is actually indicating the proliferation of cells. So during cell cycle, Ki67 is expressed. So if the cell cycle goes wrong, then P16 is expressed as cell cycle guide, if you like. And so if both things are expressed, you can see that the cell is proliferating and something is going wrong. And the cell cycle, which is typically assigned for cancer, we are applying this in cervical cancer screening here. So the question is, why would you need here automated imaging? What's the use actually? But one very important point is what we see is actually a definition of the reference, what we are looking for. You have many goals in cytology. You have many readers which are looking at different slides, and but it's, for a specific assay, it's often pretty difficult to really say what is the gold standard here. And so the idea is, using images, you could go towards really defining a diagnostic quality reference standard, and then compare different readers against it. So you can use it for reader training, for reader evaluation, and in the end, you would like to have a really objective automatic analysis in the end. These are the steps. So this is my German slide here, and it shows the general process. Never translated it because it's so well already designed, so it will never change to English. So you start actually with the scanning, digitization. Then we already have some problems. I'll show this in a second. So then we're doing some sampling here of the area, so extracting tiles, decomposition of tiles here, and then we apply some machine learning tree actually, which is really running down, and then in the end, we have a lot of features here, and then they are built together, and then doing actually classification into either normal group here, it's normal or the cervical epithelial neoplasia, so aberration is in grade 1, which is horrible, and so this warrants here specific, more in detail histological analysis here in colposcopy usually. So this we have augmented here, this last step using deep learning, but if we come to this, just example from reality here, if you like to scan those slides, this is not so easy. Cytological slides consist of many cells which are spread on a glass slide, and the problem, so you can have during focusing of the slides, so focusing is mostly solved in histology, but it's not the case in cytology, and what you see here is this three-dimensional surface of such a, these are all just interpolated here, heights of different, so see heights here of different cells, and what you can see here, this is upside down here, you can see that you have a layer of dust, for example, on top, and then underneath you have a layer of cells here. So and these are all different heights. You have here, so master difference here. So this is really difficult. So what we did here is we interfered and enhanced the actual focusing. So it's what we call semantic focusing. So a scanner, we work here with a Hamamatsu nanozoomer. It is taking out little stripes actually, and then we are directly, if these stripes are extracted, we are looking on these stripes if these stripes actually capture a cell or not. Usually that's just done on a contrast basis, so it's not very intelligent. We're trying to see if such a focus layer really contains a cell or not. So that's why we can distinguish between in and out of focus layers here. And this is not optimal really, I must admit, but we can, at least by going in a circle, we can do multiple runs, and in the end it allows us to scan a cytological slide in one layer. And this is pretty good because there's too many publications out which claim that you need to have multiple layers, and this makes image analysis a nightmare in the end. But if you have, that's why this is so important to have one scanning on one layer in the beginning. Then we have two different preparation methods. One is constant prep and other is Chopin's. They have different, so that's how you treat actually sample, how you produce a glass slide, and they are different. They have different, lead to different morphologies in the end. And so we, in both cases, we start with the conventional machine learning in the beginning, and then enhance it with deep learning. So that's typically what you would get out with feature-based methods, and that's what we always apply also. So we have features which really recognize here P16 positive cells, so you really can do a cell counting per slide here on different sin grades. Also for Ki67 positive cells or dual states which have both here. And you see already with the increasing pre-cancer grade, you see already that these cell counts raise. At the same time, the average cell size goes down. It's something you would expect because cancer cells are small, that we cytoplasm and concentrate on the nucleus here. And so but still we were not quite happy with the results for some preparations in the quality. That's why we applied here the strategy, which shows four different. Here you can see 4 different classes. So we subgroup actually these cytological cells or cell clusters, what we see in different classes. And we did we had this discussion previously about this quantitative score. What we reported, or if it should be reported, is actually what we implemented here. You can see the deep learning system now can distinguish here different classes and does some kind of rating. So it's do some specialization of the deep learning algorithm here to get a better quality in the end. You can see here, for example, 61% probability that this is a real typical cluster of double positive cells, but the system is not sure. It could also be that the single cell is 28%, so it's not totally sure here. It's pretty sure that this is really a single cell here, and this is a cluster, recognized as a cluster here with 98%, and this is a low staining cluster, which is typically an artifact here. So this is something you could tailor to your purpose in the end, but for us this already led to a marked increase in the total accuracy of the recognition, and then in the end you can overlay these slides, these classes, what you see onto a single slide. Here you see full cytology, P16, K67, double stained glass slide. So there's possibility just to see what's going on. So you see these individual events are picked out then and overlaid, and then you can in the end have a look at it. But that's basically, it's nice, but not the few pathologists would like to look at it. Yeah, these are the different quantitative properties we extract basically then on total for a single slide, and just some here time computation time information. Approximately at the moment we need 3 minutes for a typical GPU enhanced PC. So that's okay. It could be scaled up, but it's already sufficient. So processing time is not an issue here. Storage is about, you probably would need a gigabyte per slide. So for 2 scanners, which could produce approximately 200 in the optimum if they really run day and night and so on. 240,000 slides per year, that would be 230 terabytes per year. That is not possibly much, but at least it requires some decent storage concept here. The strategy we discussed with the cytologists are 3 different strategies in the end how we would apply it. One is fully automated, then a rank review actually, or what we already seen in Jeroen's presentation, just take out half of the slides and then you have marked reduction and workload for the pathologies. This is movie missing, apologize, the fixed image. What you can do is that you can, these images are then presented in a diagnostic workstation gallery. So you see here the isolated images, they are made free of background. Here, this is, you can also use the originals, but here this is just these events which are classified. They are rated, as you see, in green and red, and the different probabilities here, like positive 75%, negative 5%, but this has been overwritten here by a human, so you can override each image in the end, or you can stick to the algorithm prediction, which is here in red. So this is something how we think what we have experienced so far, pathologists could work with the results, and then you can rank all the results with the slides here by the amount of positive cells detected, so you can concentrate actually on the group of slides which are warrant specific time for the cytologist, because if you have cases with 50, 60 or so detected events, then things are pretty clear here already. You can introduce this for the training mode here. I don't go into details, but you can compare actually what your algorithm is doing here and compare it against you. So this is really something for training or for evaluation actually. We have to deal a lot with so things are far from optimal really in reality here. Just to show you what the problem is, you can see on the beamer it's always a bit difficult on the beamer, but this is good here, optimal, and beamers. This is it's going to grayish periods here. We have some studies we are looking at where this is really a problem that the sample quality we get is really bad, and this really makes the algorithm suffer and deliver less optimal quality. But this is something we have to deal with, and we can just start discussing where to optimize actually. Here's a result on the SynPrep samples for detecting SIN2 lesions, which are actually then do the triage, like we've heard before, and sent to colposcopy here. And you have here in conventional reading sensitivity of 85% and 50% specificity. So that's actually really real life, what we've seen previously already. This is real life specificity for a human reader here in this cytological setting. And with the, if you're just counting for cell, 2 or more computer detected cells, we are pretty in the range here. If we include some more morphology patterns, we even exceed human reading quality in this cohort. But I have to say, everything is always in these studies dependent really on the cohort or experience. Taking different cohort can look a bit different. We use it on an anal screening study. That's a new application of this assay to detect anal cancer, and we haven't modified anything yet. Cells look a bit differently already, but nevertheless we see a performance which is comparable to what the human is here delivering. So this shows that the whole system is pretty robust. There's a very big study we're doing with Kaiser Permanente in California here, and we have here 1,500 cases approximately. And here you see it's slightly different sensitivity and specificity. And we do not reach totally here. You see the small loss in sensitivity we have in the machine learning. But these different. That's why we need these different concepts. And I think this maybe we will see many different generic concepts which might come up and will help overcoming these bottlenecks in histology. But there's something we're working on. These are just some interim results with this classification. We hope to get better even than the conventional reading. So what's, sorry, I don't have my time with me.
Yeah, good amount of time.
Okay, a good amount. In histology, just for some example from histology, so what we discussed this already here, what we would like to have in histology clinical study, we have usually multiple sections, and all the sections show different kinds of biomarkers. We look at tumor stroma decomposition, for example. We would look at some immune cell structures, or immune cells even, or some new cancer intervention points like checkpoint blockade inhibitors, which are pretty important, become pretty important recently. Also novel therapeutic targets. So there are different information you would like to capture at different levels, and so this requires actually some registration here, and this is something we'd like to come up with. Generally, if we're doing a study, and the problem here is that all these image sets have to be segmented. This is really a bottleneck in all our studies. And we also see that the tissue wanders between consecutive sections, as we've heard already. This might be a problem or not. That's really on the block. In the case, there's no general answer to this. But the problem is you have 20 times the effort if you have 20 sections. So there are 3 different segmentation strategies. One point is what we do is analyzing and segmenting each section here differently. So there's a technician who is sitting there and demarking all these areas. You see here prostate cancer with 3 regions, for example, with invasive margins, the tumor core here, the tumor far regions. And this is really necessary to look. It is generally necessary to look at all these sections because there may be always regions which are ripped off or washed away, or this is strangest things might happen to each section. You never imagine. And another strategy is to use your bracket annotation. So you do quality check only on these things, but then you do registration using computational techniques. So you segment manually first and last, and then maps through the stack. And best it would be really fully automatic annotation. This is highly desirable, but requires stable validated algorithm. Registration, I don't go in detail here, but you just show you what problems are if you do registering. I mean, it looks very nice in these images. In reality, these are 2 sections. Yeah? Should I see in this case that they are not really very identical. You can align them and get most of these areas correct, but you don't find really this. You can never expect to find really the same cell in two consecutive sections here. That's why we developed here an image analysis algorithm based on a specific biomarker for prostate cancer. It's called PIN cocktail, and it comprises ACR and P63, these two biomarkers here, and they can nicely distinguish good tissue, so from malignant tissue, and by specific stain. You see here in the glance you get the background stain, so because this is a combination, here you get different appearances of these combinations, and so the machine learning algorithm can try to interpret and get information out of interpreting this biomarker. Then we have another slide, we have CD3 cocktail stain. You also see here multiple stainings, IHC stainings combined. You use here pan-keratin stain for the epithelial cells and conventional brown CD3 stain for the T cells. So we did some microsegmentation here and some training, just a short, very small project actually. These are some features which came out here, some examples here what we see actually. But interestingly, even on a small training set we did, with our results are here, the green ones, we compared it to some analysis we did previously with the Dividians package, and we interestingly, this is just real life examples, not tuned and not very big studies, just show what comes up if you just try. And we see that counted these areas in CD3 positive cells, and what we see is that if you use the Dividians package, we get a massive overestimation of CD3 cells. And this is really, so we could really report false results here. This is because the conventional Dividians classifier cannot compensate all these different stainings variation which might occur to the combinations of stains here in colors, because it just, this is what I meant with off-the-shelf software. In off-the-shelf software we experience a lot of limitations in the capability of making specific classifiers which are trained for specific application cases. So we get a wrong segmentation. You can see examples here of Dividians results. You see, for example, that many immune cells are recognized here in the red pan-keratin glands here, which are actually, these are not locations of T cells actually, but nevertheless software thinks it, because it's not well trained here, because of all these different staining variations which occur. So this is a specific situation, and you see that it's just some real life problems if you do this. In the deep learning system we developed, we had much more training capacity and can nicely distinguish the brown T cells here, and they're not mislocated and falsely recognized the epithelial parts here. Nevertheless, if they are even T cells located here in the epithelium, they are well recognized. So that's why I think, especially for this combinatorial stainings, the deep learning approach in biomarkers is very well suited, because it can take out the information but also can be trained to tolerate staining variation. If you then, this is just mapped in the prostate cancer sample based on ACR P63 double stain, and you can see here that you can nicely do an automatic recognition of the tumor areas. There are some healthy glands here, but they're not recognized as tumor, and then you can have these yellow areas around it, which are the invasive margin here, and then you usually what you do is you measure the immune cells in the invasive margin in a standardized way based on the automatic segmentation. What we experience here is also a key problem, that we have frequently very little tissue available. There's just too little tissue available, and you see the invasive margins are just here in very small areas just present. So if you evaluate this and draw a cutoff, you see here these different bands. These different bands are in the area measured here. These are 30 different tumors. But you see that in most areas, actually, the area measured is far below 1 square millimeter, which actually shows you that the statistical basis on which your analysis Grounded is frequently very limited, so in no publications these analyses are done. If you cannot do automatic segmentation, that's what most people cannot do, and then doing studies, then this is really a limitation, so there is really little data available on a quantitative basis in the current immunological studies here. That's a key problem. And then you can recognize that these immune cell clusters, for example, here. This works very well with a deep learning approach. But on the other hand, you again see there are very few clusters here. You can already see there are not many of them. And this is a big slide. So you can imagine that if you have just 10 clusters here in the slide, and you have very small tissue areas you're looking at, your statistical variance increases significantly, so that's why the availability of tissue area actually which is analyzed is extremely important. We did also some lung analysis here, lung adenocarcinoma analysis, some initial training here, just go quickly through it. So we let them know there are different growth patterns, so that maybe is just in addition to the discussion we had previously about the black boxes and so on. One possibility to make it more clear and transparent what the algorithms are actually doing, it would be to really go and train systems to specific patterns which are recognizable and understood by pathologists, like here the acinar growth pattern, lung adenocarcinoma, we see a lipidic growth pattern here, and that's what we asked the pathologists to do. And interestingly here also, like this example we had previously, the system here picked up a very small micropapillary pattern, which is extremely aggressive and dangerous for the patient. So this is really something where I think with deep learning can make a big contribution generally to pathology here. I skip these parts, just show one example again. If you use here just a real life example, if you use lung adenocarcinoma, we frequently observe anthracotic pigment, which comes from smoking or environmental hazards, substances which accumulate in the lung. And we see this is really occurring in large amounts, and it's really limiting the capability of algorithms to really accurately count. And we see an example here of definitions where we see this is wrongly recognized here because it just is not trained towards distinguishing anthracotic pigment from true positive CD3 positive cells. And if we develop a specific deep learning classifier that can be circumvented, we see here nicely the likelihood map here generated overlay. We see that these anthracotic pigments here are left over and are not counted as well. So that is pretty important for delivering accurate counts in the end. Lastly, we discussed a bit about multiplex staining. This is from some recent works we did with some colleagues from Mount Sinai on multiplex immunohistochemical consecutive staining, it's called. They developed a method for, so they developed the immunohistochemical part here. Just would like to show it because it's pretty interesting. You do a restaining actually and repeat this. So you have always a chemical destaining, and then you move the cover slip and block again, do the full procedure and go in circles here, and you can get multiple sections here. Stain for different biomarkers, and what you can nicely see here is the restaining, at least in this example, does not harm the biomarker appearance. So if you go with IHC, with multiplex, principally it's possible. You see here the brown areas, they are stably stained, but what's removed is a red color here. So there are different markers like CD20 for B cells, proliferation, BC-LAMP here, and immune cells here, specific subtype. So you can do an analysis here of multiple immune cell populations. And the advantage really is here, like we've already mentioned, that you can really nicely look at individual cells here. So you see here the yellow cross And what you can see here is it's really the same cell actually, which is stained in different colors, and that is extremely powerful because you can for the first time really generate these multiplex profiles for individual cells. It's here for CD3 and here 67, so you get proliferating T cells here. In the study, this was evaluated and showed to be statistically significant and shows that you can really distinguish even the survival curves between different patient classes on the basis of these combinatorial stains here. So, but this is great that it has been done, but on the other hand, if you look back to our pipeline, which we've already discussed, we see that things are even getting a bit more complex now. So this conventional pipeline here, this loop, if you would introduce such a loop here, means that really checking and doing all these checks here is getting extremely complex, very complex, because we have to do this cross-checking for each of these things, and all of these states you can do just once before it is lost because it is really physically bleached done. So this is just some outlook to show, from my view, what are challenges if large cohorts are analyzed. So the point is really, from my view, that analog pathology in the moment is still not hypothesis-driven and a black box. And it's not just deep learning, which is a black box, and digital pathology really is, we need to look at not only for the automating things, but really looking for novel structures which are giving novel information from tissues. I think that will make pathology, digital pathology, also very interesting, or more interesting than it's currently regarded at, and deep learning showed for us extremely good and extremely powerful. Data handling is something which is still a bit underrepresentative and will come up, like in genomics probably. Yeah, and I've shown you one example of our Cyto platform. And with this I end, and thank again collaborators, especially Jeroen and Andreas, and from the NCI, Nicholas and Sensen, whom we are working on cytology stuff and also some immunological stuff. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for your attention.